With a singular vision continually blurring the fine line between reality and fiction, Werner Herzog has become one of cinema's most controversial directors. A strong authorial presence pervades each of his films, whether fictional features or documentaries. For Herzog, there is no distinction between the two styles. They're just films, because real life and fiction feed off of each other for mutual poetic inspiration. His worldview often seems bleak and anti-humanistic, featuring quixotic outsiders who reject or are rejected by society only to be crushed by the weight of their own ambitions. As with the subject matter in his documentaries, it is often difficult to separate the real Herzog from the many fictions that have sprung up around him. Born in 1942, he grew up amid World War II destruction in a small Bavarian village. He saw his first movies at age 11 and quickly discovered film technique by taking heed of continuity errors in cheap B-movies. As a teenager, Herzog learned about filmmaking from an encyclopedia entry on the subject. He has written, produced, directed, and often narrated virtually all of his own films since then. Directed at age 19, his first short film, Hercules, 1962, was an editing experiment juxtaposing footage of bodybuilders with a famous racing accident. A surge of interest in new German cinema was emerging in the late 1960s, and Herzog was seen as one of its key filmmakers along with others like Fassbinder and Wim Wenders. However, Herzog never saw himself as part of it. His films have rarely been successful within Germany itself, for he claims that Germans mistrust their own culture. Herzog has been an extremely prolific director. He has produced over 50 different kinds of films for television, short films, documentaries, and 15 full-length feature films. So I'm going to survey a few of the films in his body of work, focusing on ones that I've seen in particular. A trio of films emerged from a journey to Africa in 1969. Fata Morgana is one of Herzog's boldest and most experimental documentaries. Surreal images of mirages, landscapes, and desert dwellers are accompanied by narration from the Mayan book of creation myths. Herzog has repeatedly said that in Fata Morgana and his other films, he is capturing the embarrassed landscapes of our world, places where human colonization has desecrated the earth. Likewise, his eerily beautiful landscapes are not meant to be picturesque and idyllic, but rather evocative of inner states of collective dreams and nightmares. This dual characteristic of his landscapes also suggests that basic human consciousness has been desecrated by the forces of capitalism and modern life, an idea that can be found in films ranging from The Enigma of Caspar Hauser to more ethnographic films like Where the Green Ants Dream. Landscapes often form the core of his films, and he lingers upon them in his overarching mission to find fresh images. Aggressively strange imagery would again fill his third film in Africa, Even Dwarfs Started Small, 1970, a nihilistic black comedy about inmates who rebel and take over their asylum, with a cast composed entirely of short-statured people. The world of consumer goods and bourgeois society appears vividly out of proportion, and so the dwarves begin destroying everything as they vent their anger toward a world not built for them. In his 1999 Minnesota Declaration, Herzog laid out the principles of his personal documentary style, attacking the failure of cinema verite to go beyond a superficial, quote, truth of accountants, end of quote, based in objectively observable facts. Herzog distinguishes between surface facts and a deeper aesthetic truth that can only be reached through, quote, fabrication and imagination and stylization. Consequently, some of his documentaries are fictionalized, while his fictional features are often shot like documentaries, oftentimes on location. Thus, we find that Herzog is not deeply concerned about facts in his quest for the ecstatic truth. This would be the case in a Gary, Wrath of God, 1972, his first international success and the first of 5 collaborations with actor Klaus Kinski, very, very loosely based upon the story of a Spanish conquistador and his doomed expedition to find El Dorado. His next film, The Great Ecstasy of Woodcarver Steiner, would document ski jumper Walter Steiner's flights and crashes, focusing on the ecstasy of defying gravity while leaping almost suicidally against the fear of death. Another collaboration with Kinski, Fitzcarraldo, is arguably Herzog's finest and most well-known film. Described by Herzog as his best documentary, it is a fictional feature that details a wealthy industrialist's obsessive quest to bring European opera to the Amazon. To finance his dream of building this opera house, this conquistador of the useless travels upriver and, with the help of local indigenous peoples, literally pulls a huge steamboat over a mountainside to access a fertile tributary. Chaotic 4 years in the making, the film's completion was almost as difficult as Fitzcarraldo's own quest to elevate his dreams over reality, especially because Herzog used no miniatures or special effects in order to pull the full-size steamboat up and over the mountain. Herzog was rewarded for his efforts by being named Best Director at the 1982 Cannes Film Festival. The documentary Lessons of Darkness brings the horror of the 1991 Gulf War to a more surreal and cinematic level by transforming things that are physically there into more intensified, elevated, and stylistic images, as Herzog says. Images are treated as if from any war throughout history, receiving a certain unearthly detachment through Herzog's narration. He was criticized for not making a stronger political statement in the film, but this is consistent with his avoidance of the political, searching instead for larger themes. The film we'll be studying, Little Dieter Needs to Fly, was made in 1997 and follows a pattern established in Woodcarver Steiner, bringing the subject back to the scene of an earlier trauma involving flight or defiance of gravity. German-American Dieter Dengler returns to the jungles of Laos, where he had been shot down during his first mission as a pilot in the Vietnam War. The story of Dieter's journey of survival in a POW camp becomes the inspiration for Herzog's recent fictional feature film, Rescue Dawn. There's also a strong connection between Little Dieter and another documentary that Herzog made, The White Diamond, in 2004, which focuses on Dr. Graham Dorrington's dream of balloon flight, a project that has already claimed the life of his documentarian friend. It captures the dangers of Dorrington's flight trials, the pain of returning to a past trauma, and the ecstasy of success as memories of that trauma are overcome. Herzog's greatest critical success in many years was Grizzly Man, made in 2005, which explored the life and death of environmentalist Timothy Treadwell, who lived illegally in an Alaskan wildlife refuge for many seasons, studying and trying to protect grizzly bears. Much of the film is composed of Treadwell's own footage of himself as a self-styled crusader for the bears. Herzog duly notes his respect for Treadwell as a fellow filmmaker, especially in his depictions of the natural world. However, Herzog chastises Treadwell's paranoid persecution fantasies and his lack of respect for the dangers of nature. Various friends and officials weigh in on Treadwell's life, and the conclusion is reached that Treadwell's death resulted from following his dream of crossing the boundary between man and bear. Treadwell risked and finally lost his life to a natural universe that Herzog describes as full of murder, chaos, and death. In 2008, another documentary was nominated for an Academy Award and, in fact, won the documentary award at the Edinburgh International Film Festival. Encounters at the End of the World was shot in Antarctica and was sponsored by the National Science Foundation. Strangely, the entire film crew consisted of Herzog, who recorded all production sound, and cinematographer Peter Zettlinger. The two went to Antarctica without any opportunity to plan filming locations or interview subjects and had only 7 weeks to conceive and shoot their footage. Herzog often met his interview subjects only minutes before he began shooting them. But as with so many of his films, Herzog finds intriguing aspects of the human character particularly presented with the daunting challenges of beautiful, awe-inspiring nature.